All right, find the values of x and y such that w of pi over 3 is equal to p xy. This w of an angle just is called the wrapping function. Okay, so pi over 3 represents how much we want to wrap around the unit circle. All right, and if you consider your unit circle, and you have that unit circle I gave you on that one yellow sheet of paper, formula sheet, you have 0 radians here, and then you got pi over 6, and then pi over 4, and then pi over 3, and pi over 2, and 2 pi over 3, and 3 pi over 4, and 5 pi over 6, and 5, and so on. So pi over 3 represents, if you just imagine like a thing pi over 3 long, and then it wrapped around this circle, it would go to this point here, which is where pi over 3 is. Okay, so if this is pi over 3 long, you know, it wraps around. So the central angle matches the arc of the circle, basically. So when it says wrapping function pi over, that's why it's called a wrapping function, because you're wrapping a segment this long around the circle. All right. You don't have to know why it's called a wrapping function, but that's why it is. So what they're asking us for p of x, y, they want to know the coordinates of a unit circle. So this is radius 1 circle. If you went pi over 3 radians around this circle, what are the x, y coordinates of this point right here? This is point p, x, y. All right. X is representing the horizontal distance, and horizontal distance in the unit circle is cosine of the angle. And y represents the vertical height of this point, and vertical height is the sine of that angle. So basically the wrapping function is just testing your ability to know the sine and cosine of an angle. And this gets us into this whole memorization idea of sine and cosine. If we can start memorizing those values, then we can do these very easily and quickly. The whole idea of trigonometry is the more you know in your brain, the more you have stored in your brain as far as specific numbers on these things, the quicker you are with trigonometry. It'll speed you up on standardized tests and just make you feel altogether more confident about trigonometry. So it's worth doing this. What I do is, again, considering cosines like x and sines like y, the only answers to these are going to be 0, plus or minus 1/2, plus or minus the square root of 2 over 2, plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2, and plus or minus 1. Those are the only answers to a sine or cosine in a wrapping function scenario, because they're not going to give you wrapping function in pi over 73, something weird like that that's not on your sheet. They're going to do wrapping functions of these specific angles that you've been told to memorize. So these are the only answers possible, plus or minus these numbers and 0. And what I do is in steps. So this is x equals 0, right? The y-axis is x equals 0. Okay. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps to the right. All right, so if I can imagine where it is and then count steps from 0 over, or count steps from 1 up, like that. So if x equals 0 is here, the first step is positive 1/2, positive square root of 2 over 2, positive square root of 3 over 2, 1. That's what cosine is. All right, going the other direction, x is 0, that's cosine. Negative 1/2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1. So again, just how many steps away from 0 are you? And there's the order of numbers. And this is a pattern: square root of 0 over 2, square root of 1 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, square root of 4 over 2. It's kind of a nice little pattern here. It just happens that that's 0, 1 over 2, and that's 2 over 2, which is 1. So they have simplified versions. These two don't. But again, it's just a basic pattern there, and that's how you get it. So cosine of x is going to be 1 step to the right of 0, so it's going to be 1/2. Okay. The x-axis here represents y equals 0, and y is the sine value, right? So if we look at sine, we're starting at 0, and we're going 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps up. So it's square root of 3 over 2. We could also go with the fact this point right here is y equals 1, right? You know, x equals 0, right? So that point 0, 1. 1 step lower, so I'm here, 1 step lower, square root of 3 over 2, either way you want to get to it. But again, if you just imagine stepping around the unit circle based on the angles that I've given you, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, and so on, If you started at 0, you're counting up. If you're starting at 1, you're counting down, like that. And that's basically how you do this. And the idea of the wrapping function just gives you practice at the memorization of sine and cosine. That's how I'd like you to use it. I mean, try and do it from memory and then verify on your sheet that you got the right answer. Obviously, of course, get the right answer, you know. But try and do it by memory first before you try and just look it up. And it'll make you understand it more quickly and learn it quicker.